Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks to you for joining us again for another installment of the No Trade Clause podcast. This is episode 110, brought to you by Sports Business Classroom. So this afternoon, I'm joined by two awesome guys, Avi Tiagi on my right, and Brett Usher is joining us once again on the bottom of the screen here. So this is Brett's third appearance on the podcast. We always love having him in the house, always a great time chopping it up about the NBA. You can find him on Twitter X. He's a podcaster. He loves just talking about the NBA in general, has a lot of great things to say. So, hey, Brett, it's always a great time having you on, man. Hope you've been well. Hope you're excited for the playoff run here that's just started up. And, should be a nice little playoff preview here today, man. So thanks for hopping on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's pretty much my favorite time of the year. This season was interesting. Like, I felt myself getting burned out on the NBA a little bit, like just kind of down the stretch of the regular season, like the last couple weeks. I followed it really closely this year. I talked about it a lot, and I was really feeling some burnout about it, even though it's like my favorite thing in the world. But then the playoffs start up, and I just feel rejuvenated, refreshed, totally back into it, totally locked in once again. So yeah, I'm glad we're here. The season went by fast. I think we can all agree, but yeah, this should be a fun next couple of months, right?
Absolutely, man. That's the magic of the playoffs. It has those rejuvenating powers. It's a new season, essentially. So when it starts up, everybody's feeling good. It's like, all right, we don't have to worry about the Hornets anymore, the Blazers, the Spurs just kind of like ruining things. Now we can just get into those 16 teams front and center. They're going to give us the best basketball. So that's always a great feeling. So glad to have you back on. Avi, as always, thanks for hopping on, man. You've been a great co-host. So more great times ahead, man.
Yeah, man. I agree with all your points here. I mean, honestly, the playoffs is kind of like a mint, you just like it freshens everything up immediately.
Yeah.
Like, all of a sudden you're like, all right, I'm good to go. I'm ready to speak. Let's do this,
It really is a whole new season though, too. Like, and for me, it's always an adjustment because I spent so much of the regular season focused on like the Hornets and the Spurs and like the young players and like the teams, kind of the teams that suck, and now they're just all gone, and now it's like I kind of gotta reframe things a little bit, because it's like, okay, now these are like the good teams and like the veteran players, and certainly some intriguing young guys out there still, but yeah, a whole new season. So I'm hyped.
That's right. Well, this is gonna be exciting, guys. Let's go ahead and dive into the first playoff series here in our grand playoff preview, so to speak, to get things started here. So this series has already started, and game one is actually already concluded as of this recording. So game one was played in Cleveland earlier this afternoon. The final score was 97-83. The Cavaliers did take this game. They led pretty much almost the entire game. The Magic made a few runs during the game to kind of make things interesting, but ultimately the Cavs just had too much offense. And guys, I think a really big indicator of how this series is going to go is the final score itself. The Cavaliers scored 97 points. That was enough to easily win this game. So that tells you all you need to know. They're under 100 points, and they still had a nice little cushion here at the end of the game to take this away from the Magic. So this is going to be a recurring theme, guys, as far as the entirety of this series. Both of these teams are top 10 in defensive rating. This is going to be a grinded out series. Teams are going to have to fight for every basket. There's going to be nothing easy. The Magic were actually second in defensive rating this season as a whole, and the Cavaliers were sixth in defensive rating. So both of these teams are pretty much elite on the end of the floor, and it's really going to create scenarios on the floor to where there's going to be bucket up possessions. There's going to be turnovers. There's going to be some missed shots. The Magic in general just love to create turnovers and use that to their advantage, because they're not a great offensive team. They're not a great half-court team that can generate a lot of quality shots. So their counter to that is to get out running, create steals, get blocks. They get a lot of those from game to game. So that kind of gives them another opportunity to create points for themselves. That's a really big strength of the Magic here. And the Cavs do that as well. The Cavs do have a great defense led by their twin tower lineup of Mobley and Allen. Those guys were great today. Luckily today for the Cavaliers, the lights were not too bright for Jarrett Allen, so that's a huge plus. That's a huge flip from last year where he really struggled with that. And they really asserted themselves. I think that's a great sign. Donovan Mitchell, that's the key difference here, guys. One team has Donovan Mitchell, one does not. That's a huge swing point. So for Donovan Mitchell here today, very strong showing, 11 of 21 from the field, and he finished with 30 points overall, 3 of 8 from three. So I think that's the big theme here. Both these teams have a similar style of play, but we talked about this before we went on. The Cavs have more options to go to, particularly offensively. They can swap, and I think we talked about this at a prior podcast. The fact that the Cavaliers, they can play that Twin Towers lineup, and they can be defensively lean more towards the defense. But if they want to, they can swap out one of those guys, and they can play or Georges Niang or somebody like that, and they can go small and they can space the floor, have a 4-out, 1-in offense. So that's the big difference here. Before I pass it over to you, I want to get your thoughts on this spread because like you said, I think the Magic are one of the team that you've been following a lot this season, specifically Jonathan Isaac. I know you've been singing his praises all year long, so I wanted to get your thoughts on this. But I think the really big key for the Magic here that really lost them a game, one of the big keys here is the free throw shooting. They were only 19 of 30 from the free throw line in free throw shooting. And when you lose a game like this, that's a grinded out game, you have to convert those looks, those easy shots, so to speak. And that's a recurring theme for the Magic here. They don't shoot great from the free throw line. So they are only 26th in free throw percentage, 75%. So that's kind of what they do, but hopefully they can turn it around. But let me go ahead and pass the mic over to you, Brett. What do you think about this series as a whole? Do you think the Magic have any chance of kind of grinding this out, or are they just too inept on offense to make that happen?
I think the Magic will make it interesting. I mean, full disclosure, like if we were recording this yesterday, Friday, I might have picked the Magic to win this series. Like I've been really high on them all season. I still like them a lot, but something about just seeing it today in that game one, just the extra firepower that Cleveland has. Like you said, they have Donovan Mitchell. Like he's far and away the best offensive player in this series. Like he's a proven playoff riser. We've seen it for years. I saw the stat up on the screen today. I think he's 8th all time in career playoff scoring average at like just a shade under 28 points per game. So this is a proven guy. Like that's a big part of it too. Like the Magic just don't have a lot of experience in this setting. So I think that's an advantage too for the Cavs. But yeah, when you just look at it, because like, yeah, their defenses, I mean, it's hard to compare, but they're both, like you said, elite. The Cavs are probably even a little bit better than that. What did you say? They were 6th in defensive ratings. They were 1st last year, I believe. And, they were missing Mobley a lot of this season. Like when they're at full strength, I would say they're just as good defensively as the Magic. And I think the real separator is just having not just Mitchell, but also Garland and then the two bigs and just more they can do offensively, more they can go to and get consistent results. The Magic just don't have that. They're between that and the experience, I like their chances in this one. But I mean, I think the Magic can win a couple. Like I'd probably guess it goes like 6, So I think it'll be a competitive series. I think the Magic are a tough out. Like I think if Orlando has a game where they just start hitting the 3-ball, like if they have a game where it's just falling for them, like they're going to be pretty tough to beat. But I don't know that they can do that on a consistent enough basis to win a 7-game series right now. I think they're just probably a couple pieces away.
Agreed.
Yep. In my prep for this podcast, I remember it was like 3 days ago. I watched a bunch of the game that the Magic played against the Cavaliers on February 22nd, where they won 116 to 109. And the key thing I took away from that matchup was, as much as it was that the Magic won, the feeling was they won just because of strategy and because of like intensity, right? So the way the Magic were able to win is they took far more shots in general than the Cavaliers did. They attempted 84 shots versus the Cavs only attempting 70. So that 14 shot differential was kind of where they won the match. In terms of efficiency, they weren't particularly efficient, so which is why they only won by 7. But when you're able to generate that many more possessions, by attacking the glass, offensive rebounding well, generating steals and blocks, and getting a fast break. That's kind of how you're able to win those matches. And then today, the Cavs just kind of didn't let it happen. Jared Allen and Mobley decided to show up and, show them who's boss today. Like, we're not going to get physically pushed around. We know how good Isaac is, especially when you try using him as a small ball center. We're prepared for that counter. We know how they're going to attack the glass. We know Jalen Suggs wants the offensive rebound as well. We got to get a body on him. And so they were able to limit the Magic to only out rebounding them on the offensive glass by 1, only taking 5 shots more than them, only taking 9 free throws more than them. And typically that all sounds bad. But when the Magic can't make 3-pointers, they're almost dead last in the league in terms of free throw percentage as well. Like, there's just all the efficiency factors don't work in the Magic's favor. They only have one person who's a real pull-up shooter, and that's Paolo. And he's good, but right now I don't want to depend on him as my number one pull-up shot creator. They kind of don't have that many options. I mean, the Cavs were able to aggressively just go under on the Magic guards as much as they wanted, or stunt hard at Paolo and Franz's drives without any fear of repercussions, and it worked out really well for them. This could go 6. It also wouldn't shock me based on the way it went today if it went 5. If Mobley and Jared Allen keep up with that motor, man, I think it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I'm with both of you guys there. Full transparency for me, I think before the series started, I did pick the Cavs, but I had it going 7. After today, I would definitely shorten that. The Magic they've really had some worrying signs today. The free throw percentage, the 3-point percentage. I mean, if you're going to lose both of those stats, essentially, like, you just have a very little chance to win. And Avi, like you said, those big men were so impressive today. I just looked up their combined rebound total. They had 29 rebounds between those 2 players alone. So when you're just dominating the glass, you're winning the free throw battle, you're winning the 3-point battle, it's just going to be too much to overcome. And the Magic will try to muck it up. They're going to create extra possessions. And, Jalen Suggs is a madman. He's going to do everything he can to slow down Mitchell and Garland. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to be enough. Franz Wagner for Orlando has just not been the same player in the second half of the season. They don't have that offensive punch. All their guards are just completely inefficient. Just no points, no field goals for Gary Harris. No field goals for, I think it was Cole Anthony. Avi, you mentioned earlier. So, I mean, like, if you're starting guards and then you're
0 for 17 from Gary Harris, Cole Anthony, and Markelle Fultz.
Wow.
It was brutal to watch.
Wow.
It was so
brutal. I didn't know it was that bad. And again,
this is for a team that is 29th in the league in terms of 3-point attempts too. So it's not like they were a team that was kind of putting the math in their favor either. They really needed a game rebound, which is why also, last thing I just wanted to say here, shout out to Max Strus as well. He got 9 boards as well. Because sometimes when the Cavs play these smaller players, like LeVert, I don't really think I know he's bigger, but I don't think of him as someone who, goes to the glass much to rebound. They tried playing Sam Merrill a little bit. Niang doesn't, generate that elevation. You kind of need that 3rd or 4th person to kind of be help those 2 big men generate boards so that they're not just getting gang rebounded by Suggs and Banchero and Franz. So Strus kind of playing his part and being that 3rd main rebounder, I think made a big difference today.
Yeah, he was really good from what I saw today, and yeah, I just think the Cavs are, because, like, I don't know, like I said, I felt pretty good about the Magic all season, even with their offensive shortcomings, even in terms of, like, projecting them into the playoff context. It's like, you know what, this is a team that could win a series, I think, but I feel like Cleveland is a really tough matchup for them, and I mean, again, like, I kind of have the advantage, I guess, of having seen this game today. Like, I don't know that I would have said this before, but just seeing it again, like, I think the Cavs are a tough matchup for them. Like, with that length, just the way that Mobley is able to bother Paolo with his length. Like, and it was nice to see Mobley have a really good game too, because I think some of the discourse around him has been a little bit ridiculous online this season. Like, the way people talk about, dude, like, he's in his 3rd season. Like, he's, he was DPOY finalist in his 2nd
It's because
season.
of Chad and Wemby, man. They've changed the expectations for people so much that I think you just immediately start overlooking some of these young bigs.
I tell you though, watching the college guys like Edey and Klingon, I'm kind of like, okay, I know I'm just spoiled because I've been watching Wemby and Chet all year. Like, I need to take a step back because, like, these guys are, you know what I mean? But I think they have spoiled us a little bit. But Mobley is, like, right there, kind of like a tier below those guys. And he was awesome today. But that's going to be a tough one for the Magic. But I mean, Magic fans should feel great. Like, it's been a very successful season. I mean, just getting into the playoffs, let alone as a 5 seed, is huge. So
no,
you got to feel
absolutely
good going forward.
Yeah, you're an inside-out team. You need more time to add that perimeter talent so that you can really compete.
Because you see it, like, they generate open looks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, it's not even so
now.
much like the spacing. That's the issue. It's like the actually just being able to make a 3-pointer consistently. They just need guys that can knock down those shots consistently. They don't have them now. They will have them next year. I'm pretty confident.
No, absolutely. They're on the right track, and this is going to be a great learning experience. So they're going to figure out what they need to change, what they need to modify, come out next year, and I'm sure they're going to be even better. They're going to be a real problem once the offense catches up to their defense. So speaking of offense, let's go ahead and move into the second series here. This is a matchup here that actually, as of this recording, their game 1 just finished. So the Timberwolves handily took this game from the Suns, 120-95. In the second half, they just started running away. Ant-Man had an 18-point quarter, and that really kind of swung the momentum completely in Minnesota's favor. Now, to kind of start this preview here, for the Suns, I'm really focusing on something in particular. It's going to be the three-point shooting, and specifically the three-point shooting of the others, quote unquote. We know what we're going to get from KD. Beal had a pretty solid game for what I saw. Booker was held in check by Nickeil Alexander-Walker a lot of the time. That kind of short-circuited their offense, as Avi mentioned to me earlier. But for the Suns, I mean, those others, I'm looking at them to basically convert those looks that they're going to get from the defensive attention that the big three are going to get during the game. So for the Suns, they're 5th in three-point percentage at 38%. So we know these guys are efficient, and Grayson Allen is a big reason for that. When you're 46% by yourself, you're the best three-point shooter by percentage in the entire league. You're going to bump that up for sure for your team. Now, the counterpoint to that is, what does their attempts look like? They were 25th in attempts this season. So for this team, they had 32 per game. It's just a completely different story about how many they get up. So, I mean, they have guys that are capable with Allen, with Eric Gordon, with Royce O'Neal. So those guys can hit it, but it's like, how many are they going to get during the game? Because I'm sure for the Timberwolves, it's like, hey, these guys can hit that. Let's just be sure to just not even give them the attempt. Run them off the line by any means possible. They don't have a ton of players that are going to put a ton of pressure on the rim from game to game. Beal did that quite well today, but other than that, Booker was held in check. KD is not going to put a ton of pressure on the rim every time down. He likes that mid-range. He likes the pull-up, so that's not a natural spot for him. Royce is not going to do that. Gordon can do that a little bit, as well as Grayson Allen, but really, if you run them off that line, it changes the whole dynamic for them. And they're going to get their mid-rangers, but we all know that's not the most efficient shot in basketball, especially if you're not hitting at least a 45, 50% clip consistently. So that's what I'm kind of keying in on for them. Minnesota did a great job today. I will just go ahead and give them credit for their performance. They came in, they followed the game plan to a T. They knew exactly what Phoenix wanted to get. They cut it off. They cut off Booker's game. Alexander Walker is the big game changer here for me for what I saw. I didn't see the whole game, but every time I watch him play and just how he navigates those screens, he's just really great at just, hey, you're not going to stop my momentum. If you set a screen on me, I'm going to get held up for maybe like a fraction of a second. I'm right back in the play. I'm getting behind the player. I'm right there on his back. They can feel my presence. And I think that's a big reason why Booker had an off game today. And that's the same story for whoever he's guarding. So that's a key for them. And I'm just curious to see if that continues in game 2 and beyond, if they can keep that pressure up. But I think their defense in particular, especially if Ant-Man is going to be this proficient, it's going to give them a great chance at really making this a series and possibly even taking this series. I went with Phoenix to win this series before today. I picked them in 6. But I feel like it's going to be a highly contested series, especially when we get back to Phoenix. And if Booker can get loose, it's going to be a back and forth for sure. I really like this series. I'm really excited to see where it goes. It's kind of just contrasting styles. We know the Suns can put some big games on the board in terms of scoring, but the Timberwolves are the best defense in basketball right now, and they displayed that today, holding Phoenix to under 100 points, 95 points. That's going to be a big topic of discussion here for the rest of the series. Avi, we talked about this a little bit earlier about the game. I think you were kind of watching a little bit earlier. What did you see from that game, and is it kind of what you expected kind of going into this series?
It's hard for me to say it's what I expected because I don't think I can remember the last time I've seen a team get dominated on the glass the way the Suns were dominated. I mean, it was truly brutal. If you look at the final rebounding stats, we're talking 52 rebounds to 28 in a playoff game. That is
Man,
crazy to me. I mean, that really says something. That tells you how dominant Gobert and Naz Reid and Karl Anthony Towns, Jaden McDaniels, Nikhil Alexander Walker, just the collective size of that group. I mean, it's crazy how much they were able to inflict their will upon the Suns today. I mean, I I would have picked the Suns 2-6 as well, just because of how dominant they looked at the end of the regular season as well. I think what I undersold was just the difficulty the Suns have had year over year, like the last 3 or 4 years, against high level defensive competition when it comes to being able to convert on their sort of shot profile. So this year, no team attempts a lower percentage of their shots as dunks or layups than the Phoenix Suns. Only 29% of their shots are dunks or layups. Like that is extremely low. Typically,
yeah,
you want to generate those sort of shots. Those are your priority shots because those are the ones you're going to convert the most. And Phoenix just doesn't have any avenue to create any of those easy attempts because they don't have a traditional point guard. And the offense they run, as good as Booker, Beal, and Durant are at their best as pull-up shot creators and just like one-man offenses, when you have all three of them together, there are still times where the ball will get stuck, or one game that might look great in terms of like how the ball movement is going and how they're like, you can really tell that there's still some of that old Phoenix Suns basketball where they're running a set for Booker coming off a screen. All right, now he passes it to another man pass. They're like tic-tac-toeing themselves, but when it's at its worst, it just gets kind of stagnant. Nobody's able to create any quality matchups. Booker was able to blow by his man a couple times today. It didn't even matter because Gobert's lurking in the paint. Like it was not pretty, but you expect it'll get better just because of what type of shot creators they are. But I mean, it wasn't great. And I also found one last thing really interesting. There was one lineup that the Timberwolves had that they didn't go to very often in the regular season, but was highly effective. It was the one that in the middle of that third and fourth quarter run where they completely blew the game open. It seemed like that's what Chris Finch was going to. He went to a lineup of Anthony Edwards, Nikhil Alexander Walker, Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid, and Rudy Gobert. And that those lineups have actually been surprisingly effective. Like there are times where you could switch in Kyle Anderson too, and those lineups work. But the Anthony Edwards, Nikhil Alexander Walker, Gobert, and Naz Reid pairings have been really strong. So with Kyle Anderson, they've been a plus 32 per 100 possessions with that group. And with Jaden McDaniels, they've been a plus 3.8. Some of that is sample size variance and due to like how opponent shooting works. But on the aggregate, even if you kind of adjust for opponents making more 3-pointers. Like the reason the point differential is so high is partially because I think they're shooting above their skis and opponents were undershooting. But even if you adjust for that, that that's more like a +8 level rating in around like 300 possessions. So it is a pretty good lineup for them to go to when they go to their bench lineups. And I thought it was impressive how effective Anthony Edwards today was kind of as the main ball handler. And if he can keep that up, I think the Timberwolves could really win this series.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it's I certainly would have picked the Suns heading into it. I didn't make like official predictions this year, but I probably would have picked them in 6 or 7. I'm leaning slightly Wolves now. I mean, the Wolves were the better team all season, without a doubt. I just feel better about how they match up, I think, with the Suns. After kind of seeing it today, I think this is probably the most likely 7-gamer in my opinion. This one feels like it's going 7, and neither result would surprise me. The only thing that would surprise me is like a quick series, because I think we're gonna see Phoenix make adjustments. I still like the way Phoenix matches up with this team. That's why I was high on them going into it. We kind of saw that this season, and like you said, just the way they played down the stretch, like I was really becoming a believer. I still am. This one almost feels like a toss-up to me. But we've just got some great playoff performers in this one. When you look at Durant and Booker, obviously, but then Anthony Edwards, just in his relatively brief playoff experience, but the last 2 seasons, like this guy rises in the playoffs, and he did it again today. I thought Phoenix's length might give him a little bit more trouble than it did, but he had that quarter. He just started cooking, and if he's going to be getting off like that, like, you know, you couple that with the defense, and Nikhil, man, like I just love this this season for him, this fit, this home that he's found, this role that he's found. Like, I've always liked him. I always have felt like there's something there, you know, for sure, like a good NBA player there, but I just wasn't sure what it would look like. I think early on, I probably focused too much on the offense. Oh, could he play point guard like this and that? And then this is who he's meant to be. And like, as great as he was defensively, like for him to give you, I think he had 18 off the bench, to give you that kind of offensive production too. That's huge. That could swing a game. But they were in total control of this one, and I really like their chances. But I think this is going to be a very good series. And I do think Phoenix will game plan. If Phoenix took game 2, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. This is going to be an interesting series. I don't want to read too much into the results of game 1, but where I was kind of on the fence, it might have tipped me a little bit toward the Wolves. But this is a fascinating one, and it's a hard one to call for sure at this point.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with that, Brett. That I think you just brought up a key challenge that we have as observers from watching the playoffs. It's to not overreact to game 1 results. It's something that it's a trap it's easy to fall into, but we just have to remember, like, I mean, there's so many series out there in history that have been a game 1 victory for a certain side, and even a blowout.
Yeah.
And then the next team wins 4 in a row. We've seen that before. So it's the challenge is like, hey, let's make some observations. There's some things we can pull from it. But at the end of the day, it is game 1. And a lot of teams go into this. And I think LeBron said this on the Behind the Game podcast with JJ Redick. I watched yesterday, episode 5. He said that a lot of times teams go into the game, not to say they go into a game and just don't care, but they go into it and it's like, hey, guys, just play your game, play free. Let's see what happens. And then game 2, we'll make adjustments where needed, and we'll get back on track and do what we need to do. So that's something that you said I think is key here, and in our role, we're watching these teams. And then about Edwards, you mentioned that he had a great series last year. That round 1 against Denver was very impressive. 31.6, which is scoring average for the series. 56% from 2-point range, 34% from 3, 84 from the line. And that's the eventual champion Denver Nuggets. And this is a Timberwolves team that gave the Nuggets some problems there that no other team did in their run to the championship. So the fact that he did that on that stage against that team, it bodes well in this series. And I said this to Avi before we went on. I don't think that the Suns are going to be able to keep him in check for the majority of the series. There might be a game somewhere to where maybe he's a little bit off, but for the majority, I see him having a similar performance to today, essentially, just being able to keep guys off balance. And, you know, the Suns don't have any of those great perimeter stoppers. They don't have any Nikhil Alexander-Walker to throw at him to slow him down. KD is good in his own right, and Royce is good in his own right, but they're not perimeter stoppers. They're more of those guys like, hey, they're that's next tier down, 1 or 2 tiers down, to where it's like they're solid. They have great moments, but you can't stick them on a high usage, high powered offensive player and expect them to, really hold them in check. So I really feel like this series will go the distance. I think it's going to be a toss up. It's just going to be about, hey, how did they adjust? How does Minnesota continue to contain Booker, contain these big guys? And how can the Suns really just capitalize on the attention that those high usage guys get? Grayson Allen did twist his ankle today. I wanted to point that out as well. I don't think he came back into the game. So, I mean, if he's hampered, if he doesn't play, that's a serious, serious problem. For
he didn't have a field goal today, I don't believe, which is like that's major. Like when you think about what he's done this season, like you're going to need more from him, obviously. Like you said, to capitalize on the attention the other guys draw. Like that's the guy that needs to hit 5-6 threes. Like
he has to.
Yeah,
for sure.
All this conversation actually made me think, as we're talking about not overreacting, quick tangent for a second, just to make a point here. Even the Warriors, when they won their championship 2 years ago against the Grizzlies, game 5 of a series, they were down 55 before the bench players came in and cut it to 39. Like even late in a series, there are times you can make. Sometimes all it takes is one or two lineup adjustments, and that can be enough to flip a series. Like in that series, the case was they put Kevon Looney into the starting lineup. All of a sudden, they stopped getting like destroyed on the boards as much, and that kind of changed it because now you're going possession for possession with a team that can't really shoot as well. So you were able to win the next game by 14. In this series, I think the question now becomes after the Timberwolves have kind of laid their cards out and shown, hey, we can run an effective offense without Mike Conley if we need to. I think the question becomes, what are the Suns going to do adjustment-wise to kind of attack Anthony Edwards and make it uncomfortable? I think they're probably going to start doubling him more, mix up some coverages, hedge a bit more often to kind of throw him off, make him get confused about what he's seeing. And I'm hoping they start playing Josh Okogie more. I know he's basically been like in storage somewhere, but I mean, if Royce O'Neal isn't working, you kind of don't have that many other options to go to. He's probably the best guy left on your roster at just like pure coverage of Anthony Edwards, like an isolation man defender. So maybe you just dust him off. I mean, I'm trying to think adjustment wise.
Well, it's a little bit of a revenge series component with him too.
Right.
So maybe you get that little extra boost. It might be worth a shot. You know, if he was ever going to have the series of his life, you know, maybe it'd be against his former team. But
that's true.
But I think
they might need him.
They might. I think he's probably the best perimeter defender on the squad. And they I think one of the reasons like you know, last year against Denver, they didn't have McDaniels in that series. They didn't have Naz Reid in that series. Like if they have those guys, that could have been like a 7-game series because they still gave him a pretty good fight. Or who knows? Maybe
they gave him the best fight of anybody, honestly.
Maybe they could have beat him if they had those guys. I don't know. Probably I wouldn't say they would, but I'm just saying like if that had happened, if they had gone to 7 or maybe beat them, like maybe like we'd all be a little more confident in what they are as a playoff team.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas it's still kind of like, oh, you know, back-to-back first round exits. Like we haven't seen it yet, but like, you know, I just think a part of that last year was health. And it's like, now we're seeing this team fully healthy with Nikhil fully integrated. And they're looking strong. This was a team that was in first place a lot of the season, had the best defense all year. I mean, they are no joke. It's just like, we just haven't seen this group get past the first round yet. So, I mean, this just might be the year that it happens.
It might be. So this is going to be one to watch for sure. And I can't wait to see how the rest of it unfolds. Another series here, guys, that I think is going to be super interesting to follow for a lot of reasons is going to be the Sixers and Knicks series. So this is another one that I think we're shifting back to more of the grinded out nature that we talked about with Cavs and Magic. Both of these teams, I mean, they can get stops, especially the Knicks. I mean, the Knicks, when OG Anunoby was in the lineup, I mean, man, they were absolutely incredible on defense, really on both ends. But their defense was staggering when he played. So that's going to be a major component of them to really just kind of slow down the Philadelphia weapons, having him in the lineup. So the Knicks won this season series 3-1. That, of course, that's not super indicative of what's going to happen here. But just wanted to point that out real quick. And for Philadelphia, looking at them briefly, I mean, it's the Embiid equation. Like, what is he going to give them? How does he look? Is he healthy? They were 38-1. The Sixers were when Embiid played this season. They were only 16-27 when he didn't play. And that's a big reason. That's their reason they ended up in the play-in. If he never got hurt, they're at least, I would say, home court advantage in the first round. I mean, they could have been high as 2 if he hadn't got hurt.
He really could have.
Yeah. And you look at what he does for them by the numbers. Their efficiency differential when he plays per cleaning the glass is plus 9.6. That is the 91st percentile. So the on-off numbers, I mean, they tell the whole story as well, in addition to the record. And he does so much for them because he generates easy baskets. He gets so many free throws for them. The Sixers are first in free throws made per game, 19.5. And they're second in free throw percentage at 82.6%. So for Embiid, I mean, that he's the entire engine of this team. They are a contender with him, and they are nowhere near without him. That's as big of a gap as you can think of for any player. I mean, that's how significant he is. He is the defending, he's the reigning MVP. That's how important he is to this team. So I think a weak point here for them, though, even with Embiid, is the rebounding. So for rebounding, they are only 23rd in defensive rebounding. And that's important because the Knicks are extremely proficient as an offensive rebounding team. So the Knicks definitely have the advantage in that department. I mean, everybody rebounds in that team, even the guards. We've seen that from Josh Hart, triple doubles, 10 rebounds, 12 rebounds. That's not uncommon to see from him. So that's something I'm really like looking at as far as like what can be a difference maker. I wouldn't expect a differential as crazy as what we saw maybe in the I think it was the Magic Cavs game, to where it was like just an incredible differential. But I mean, if it's a plus 12, 15, 18 for the Knicks, it could really just kind of create just enough of an edge to give them the win, because I don't think any of these games are going to be blowouts. I think every single game is going to be single digits. It's going to be right up to the last possession. Everything is going to be important here. I think I've seen a lot of people pick the Knicks in this series, and I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I think one of my big questions for the Knicks kind of going in here is like, how does Brunson hold up going into this series and this grinded out series? How does Hart hold up? How does DiVincenzo hold up? I looked at their minutes over the last 5 games before the playoffs and blew my mind. Hart, this is starting from, I think, the 5 games before the playoffs up until the last game. 37, 46,
oh my God,
32, 49, and 49, 2 games in a row for Josh Hart. Jalen Brunson, 39, 42, 30, 37, 41. Dante DiVincenzo might be the craziest. 37, 38, 41, 44, 53 that last game.
Yeah, that one was crazy.
These guys are playing incredible, especially in this era of the NBA. Like, you don't see this hardly ever. I mean, it's incredible. So I just wonder, like, as we get into games 2 and 3 and 4, and if it goes 6 or 7, like, I just wonder like how these guys are going to look after several games of going in these games to where it's just super competitive, grinded out to the last possession. It's just something I'm thinking about, because I would just think that eventually you would see an efficiency drop, and these guys wouldn't be quite as effective. So I might be I might be by myself here. I might be in the minority, but I actually went Philly for this series for my pick to win. And I do think it's going to be close. I do think it's going to be every game is going to be a toss up, but I don't know if Embiid is even 80, 90% of his old self. I think they can have just enough to get over the hump, but I do think it's going to be super close. So Brett, as far as this series and what you're thinking is going to happen here, which way are you leaning? And, what are the major reasons for who you think is going to take this series?
Yeah, I'm leaning Knicks still. Embiid, like, even in the play-in and obviously when he came back, he hasn't looked like himself. I'm looking at the stats. The game is actually going on right now. Like, it looks like he's doing well. He's putting up numbers. I haven't watched it, but just from a physical standpoint, it was hard to tell in the playoff game, like how much of it was just he was gassed, like his win, and how much of it was like, knee pain. But he just didn't look right. I think he was mostly just exhaustion. I don't know, like I always say about Philly, like anytime that they have Embiid on the court and he is, like you said, like 90% plus of himself and healthy, like they're a contender and they're going to be really tough to beat. But he just hasn't looked like a guy that is going to be able to make it through a series at like 100%, let alone multiple series. So I just have questions about that, just based on kind of like my eye test. What I've seen, he doesn't look close to 100%. He looks slow. He looks tired. Now, I don't know. He's, again, putting up really big numbers so far in this game. I'm certainly going to go back and watch the replay later. Maybe it was just a matter of conditioning and he's kind of like ramping up and getting back to where he needs to be. And if that's the case, they're going to be tough. The Knicks obviously are missing Randall. I was more concerned about that when I thought it might be him and OG, but I'm I feel like as long as everyone else is healthy, I'm not as worried about the Randall absence. And I feel like they've got the best player in the series in Brunson, assuming Embiid is not himself. If Embiid is himself, he's obviously the best player in the series, arguably the best player in the league. But I just think if he's 80% of himself or whatever he's kind of looked like these last couple of games, I think the Knicks have that guy in Brunson, and I think he's going to put on a show. And then, I think like a low key thing for Philly is missing DeAnthony Melton too, especially when you're trying to match up with a guy like Brunson. That's a guy they could really use. And there's a couple things. DiVincenzo, like what are we going to see from him? Is he going to keep up his, scorching hot shooting from deep? If he is, I really like their chances. I think that's for real. But I'm going Knicks in this. I think they're legit, man. They're a very good team, and I just think Philly's got a little bit too many question marks for me, just in terms of depth, in terms of Embiid's conditioning, in terms of kind of just reliable offense. If Embiid's not himself, I was kind of surprised they pulled out that victory against Miami after the first half that they had. But this should be a good series too, and I agree with what you said off the top, Aaron. Like it's going to be another in the mud series, but I think that kind of favors the Knicks. I think that's an environment in which they can thrive.
All right, Avi, break the tie, man. Knicks or Sixers?
See, this is interesting. Coming into this week, especially coming off last week, remember when we were talking so much about, the Philly point differential for the team with or without Embiid, what the lineups look like, how they had adjusted with Lowry, how good that Lowry, Maxey, Oubre, Tobias Harris, and Embiid lineup was. It was like plus 40 per 100 possessions. Like everything looked really good. I kind of expected myself to walk into this series and just be like, yeah, I'm gonna pick the Sixers in like 6 or something. Like I thought I would be 6 and not even necessarily a close 6. Like I thought I would come into this much more comfortably than I actually feel now. I think partially it's driven a little bit by that playing game, because when you watch that playing game, Miami at that point especially with Butler hobbled, was nowhere near as talented as Philly was, but they were kind of still able to level the playing field just by throwing out like man press coverages against them, like a whole bunch of zone on the back end, kind of mixing it up on Embiid, just like teams have done in the past, just like the Nets did last year. I kind of thought that it would be easier for them to adjust against a team that was that limited in talent, and it proved to be much more difficult than I expected. Like they really needed like a fantastic Batum game to kind of bail them out of that game, and that was a little concerning to me. And then I started thinking about the actual matchup, and again, we're recording right now while the game is happening, so we don't really have a great sense of what's going on. But I know that Isaiah Hartenstein is actually feeling healthier. He had been kind of dinged up before, and it seems like he's going to start today. And when I look at Isaiah Hartenstein as a matchup, secretly defensively, especially as a post presence, he has been much better as a defender than I think I remember him being even, let's say, 2 years ago. Like, I think he is someone who has steadily improved his defense and his physicality every year in the league. And this year, I think he's actually a really strong defender. So if you go look at his defensive dashboard on NBA.com, on shots less than 6 feet that he's contesting that are less than 6 feet away from the hoop, opponents are shooting 11% worse than expected against him within that range. So that's like a proper paint presence, someone who can really be a shot blocker. And again, a lot of his time spent, he's not like a roamer or someone like Jaren Jackson in years past, where it was, hey, Steven Adams is actually taking the center matchup. You're just kind of getting to do cleanup duty the way Mobley and Allen used to kind of split doing in years past. Like he straight up will do that as the primary center, having to handle the difficulty in coverages and having to handle opposing big men who are kind of trying to attack him in the paint. So I actually think there's a chance the Knicks match up better against Philly than I originally thought, just because maybe there's a chance against a hobbled Embiid that they could kind of just let Hartenstein handle him one-on-one without having to stunt too hard or send in too much help. Because even with Melton hurt, when you slot Lowry in, theoretically, you still kind of have Embiid plus shooters plus Maxey surrounding him. So if you're someone who can't guard Embiid one-on-one and you have to try to help too much, that's kind of where the problems start opening up, because now one shooter is going to be open. They're going to tic-tac-toe their way to finding someone open. But if you don't have to do that, and you keep mixing it up, and you take up something out of the Miami playbook, and you start playing more zones to kind of keep Brunson protected, it's still tough for me because when I think about it, when I see Maxey and Embiid, and then I think about, okay, if you're able to limit Brunson in a way that the Cavs didn't show last year, but the way Miami kind of did, if you just kind of limit Brunson in the equation as a small guard, what else do they have offensively that I trust? So I think I'll still say Philly, but I'll say it in 7. And I don't feel as confident about it as I once did, especially with Embiid. He could get hurt any minute. Like it could be game 3, he's having a great game. Sixers might go up 2-1, he's hurt, and the series is over. So it makes it risky. I think I'll still say Philly, but credit to the Knicks for making me as unconfident as I am right now.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. I don't feel as confident as I did when I initially made the pick. As time is going on, I'm like, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, you bring up a great point, Avi, about Brunson's importance to this team. If he's limited, if he's having an off shooting night for whatever reason, like today, right now, he's 3 for 11.
Oh boy,
for 9 points. But they are still in the lead. They're up by 2. So at least today they're compensating for his inefficient shooting night. But yeah, for some reason he doesn't shoot well. If Philly's able to hold him in check, I think he can swing the tables enough in Philly's favor. But yeah, I think as long as Embiid can be reasonably close to his usual self, I think it's going to be a great series. I just really hope he stays healthy and he can make it through the entirety of it. That's going to give Philly the firepower they need and the two-way play they need to really make a great series out of this. Real quick before we go to the next game, Avi, you mentioned Hartenstein's awesome defensive numbers and how he's improved as a defender.
Yeah,
I go on dunks and threes a lot, and I go on estimated plus minus. So I'm just curious about how players are doing and what their overall impact is on defense. And you'll see, like Jonathan Isaac, he's number 1. I forgot to mention that. We talked about the Magic. He's plus 4.1. He's at the top. Number 2 is Isaiah Hartenstein on this chart. And I was like, oh, wow, really? Like, I didn't know he was doing that well as a defender this year, but he's plus 3.9, right behind Jonathan Isaac. So it reinforces your point. I wouldn't say he is actually second overall in the league, but just the fact that he's this high on this chart, it shows that he is a plus defender at the rim, and he can really make a difference there. So
they got Mitch back now too. So like between him and Mitch, it's like, you couldn't ask for a whole lot more in terms of like what to throw at JoJo, but yeah.
And Deuce McBride on the perimeter, so that kind of helps against Maxey as well. Like they have the pieces and the rotation with Anunoby as well being a bigger forward. Like they have the counters defensively, I think, for sure. It's just, even if they muck it up, it's like the Magic. The Magic are mucking it up against the Cavs, but they might not have the firepower to beat the Cavs, even in a situation that's ideal to them. I'm wondering if that's what the Knicks' fate ends up being against the Sixers, where they muck it up, they bring the game to a low-scoring situation just like they would prefer, but maybe they just don't have the horses for it.
Yeah, it could be. We'll see.
Yeah.
So getting on to another matchup here, we're going back to the Western Conference for a first-round matchup that is still to come tonight after the Sixers-Knicks game. For us, it's going to be Lakers-Nuggets. So we get this matchup for the second year in a row, and man, this has been the Nuggets show every time. They do have the Lakers number. They won every matchup, I believe, this series when the two teams played. The Nuggets won the season series 3-0. I will say, though, going back to last year, you look at those postseason games, it's not like the Nuggets won by 20 when they were playing. It was 6. 3 of those wins by the Nuggets were 6, 5, and 2 points. So it's not like the Nuggets were just dominating from start to end and they won by 15, 20 points. They were close games. And I think this year, now that the Nuggets are a little bit weaker than last year, at least in my opinion, losing Bruce Brown, losing Jeff Green, they're having struggles when there's some of their starters come off the court. They're 25th in bench scoring per game, 29.4. So they're really going to lean more on Christian Brown this year to produce for them. Peyton Watson is going to be called on in defensive scenarios. Reggie Jackson, what can they get from those guys? That's going to make a difference here. And also for the Lakers, I think for them, especially on offense, I think they are improved from last year. And we look at how they finished the year, especially when they inserted Hachimura into the starting lineup and they went on a run. And from the All-Star break to the end of the season, they were a top 5 offensive team. So D'Angelo Russell got hot. You start Reeves. He has an awesome impact on the court. Hachimura is doing great. LeBron is LeBron. And those pieces kind of combine to give the Lakers a really potent offense down the line. So I think with those two factors, I'm not going to come out here and say that the Lakers win the series. However, I do think they can make this competitive. I think they can at least take a couple of games off the Nuggets. It's just my gut feeling, just based on how the Lakers have looked down the stretch. The Nuggets, I mean, they did finish the season great, as they did the last year. They kind of took their foot off the gas, but this year they finished the season very strong. And the metrics are great once again. Second in the West, still a great team. I do think they lost a little bit, though, as far as just as being a complete unit from 1 to 8, 9 in the rotation. It's a little bit different. So I do want to say Nuggets in 6 is kind of where I'm feeling right now, just based on how things have changed a little from last year. It's going to be a battle, though, in the paint. I think same thing as we saw last year. Both these teams love to get shots inside the arc. Denver's first in 2-point attempts per game at 57 a game. We know the Lakers like to get inside the arc. Much has been made about their free throw differential, like how many more free throws they get compared to every other team. We see that all the time. So I really do think it's going to be a closer series this time, just based on just things have changed a little bit since last year. But I do think overall, Denver still has an incredible starting 5. They still have arguably the best player on the planet in Jokic. And those factors, I think, do kind of push them over the edge for me, at least in terms of like who's going to win this series, who has the upper hand. But I do think it's going to be fun. It's going to be competitive. It's going to be back and forth. And I'm just interested to see how those non-Jokic, non-Murray minutes go for the Nuggets, because there have been times, at least in the regular season, to where it's a little shaky. It's not quite the level of consistency and just overall potency that we're used to seeing from the Nuggets here. So, Avi, what are your feelings on this series? Do you think the Lakers might have a slightly better chance at being competitive than last year?
I think they'll have a chance of being more competitive just because, first of all, last year coming into the playoffs, I know it seems like a foregone conclusion now that they were able to make it as far as they did, but that team kind of retooled on the fly with those major trades, and LeBron wasn't really healthy coming into the playoffs. Like he was still dealing with the foot, and even if you were watching him against the Warriors and against the Lakers, he didn't have the same level of explosion. He looks more explosive to me this year than he did last year, which is again, this man is a marvel. Like,
don't know how, but
knock on wood, him and AD are healthy right now, like relatively healthy. It's AD, so but still relatively healthy. So I think they have a better chance just on the basis of that. Offensively, I think this is D'Lo's best season. I think they unlocked something with Reeves last year at the trade deadline when they finally gave him the keys and said, "Yo, you can be the third guy." So I feel like they have more options now offensively. Rui has been a great addition for them since last year at the near before the trade deadline as well. So they have offensively, I think they have the pieces. What they're missing from last year's run that they haven't fully replaced was when D'Lo started getting cooked defensively, they just turned to Schroeder. They don't really have someone in that role right now. I mean, Gabe Vincent has been on or off, like hurt this year, so he hasn't kind of been able to step in and show that he can fulfill that role. So that's a question mark for me. And then last year they had Jared Vanderbilt. Now he's just like not in the picture right now. So I'm not sure what they'll be able to go to in terms of the lineups. We've talked so much about the Nuggets lineups and how they're so dependent right now on their starting lineup crushing teams. I think that they still match up well against the Lakers. And I think the surprise attack elements that the Lakers had against them last year, where they would kind of treat AD as the roamer and maybe LeBron would be guarding Jokic. Sometimes they would mix it up. Jokic would have to kind of decipher how he was going to play with um, Aaron Gordon to generate easy dunks and layups. I think they're more in tune with that this year because they've had experience dealing with that a lot more this year as well. So you lose a little bit of element of surprise. You lose Bruce Brown though, so you lose a second ball handler. So maybe that means you can't play your potent lineup as much because maybe you have to stagger Jamal and Jokic more because you don't have some. Reggie Jackson isn't what Bruce Brown is last year. Mm-hmm. So it's tougher. I think the Lakers can make it a closer series than last time. Maybe they can take it to 6. I think precedent still tells me I should just say Nuggets in 5, but I think it can be closer.
Yeah, I definitely could pretty much just echo a lot of what you guys said. Like, I think the Lakers are better now than they were last season. I think not just the Rui addition, but inserting him into the starting lineup like they did kind of for the second half of this regular season, like that really unlocked some stuff for them. That was the right move. They've looked like a completely different team since then. So yeah, I definitely don't think they're getting swept this year.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
I would. There's no way I'm picking against the Nuggets in this one. There's a little temptation there. There's a little temptation to make the hot take pick and go with the Lakers in 7. But I can't get there, man. Jokic is too good. Yeah, the Nuggets lost a little bit, but they've kind of gained an interesting new dimension in Peyton Watson being a bigger part of things now. So like that's got its advantages. I don't know if it's a net positive. Yeah, they did lose a little something, but they are the champs. They've got championship swagger. We saw how they ran through the playoffs last year. This is essentially still that team. They've got the best player. Just can't pick against them. But I do think it's going to go I think this is going to be a competitive series. I'm very excited to watch the game tonight after we record. I would say Nuggets in 6. I think the Lakers get 2. This is going to be a good series. It's going to be a really fun one, but I just can't pick against big
I think this might be another Jamal Murray legacy series. Just when I look at who might be guarding him or switching onto him a lot of the time, if he's getting a constant dose of Reeves and D'Angelo Russell, I think there's some 30-10 potential here. Though that's actually, I think, the biggest factor. I feel like if they had 1 or 2 more pieces, I might even say that this could push to 6 or 7. But the fact that defensively on the perimeter, I don't know who I trust to guard Jamal Murray. I think that's why I'm kind of limiting my expectations to 5. I think that's kind of what's making it a bad matchup for them. Where it's nobody can really stop Jokic anyways. Nobody's figured out how to stop Jokic and Gordon. And they can't really stop Jamal Murray. So what do you have left to stop?
I mean, they do Gabe Vincent. I'm glad you mentioned him. He is back now, and he was cramping up a little bit the other night.
He's gonna help. Yeah,
but I don't. Yeah, he helps. But it's obviously a trade off. If he's out there and one of Reeves or Russell isn't, you're losing a lot offensively. He can certainly guard a little bit. He plays with effort, with intensity defensively. They might need him. Just because of the Murray piece, like you're saying, even with what they would lose offensively. But yeah, I don't think he's going to be a series shifter. He's just a little subtle thing where, they might have a slight answer at times.
Now. Yeah. Change up the matchup a little bit. Just give him a different look. Throw him out there.
See how it goes.
I agree. So that